Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Trident Realms versus the Forces of Nature. This battle was fought at 2250 points and the scenario was push. Now before I get into the list themselves, you'll notice that down here in the video description we have a link to a Google Drive. That'll have the list from now on, with my opponent's list always being 0, 0, 1 and mine being 0, 1. It'll be linked, obviously listed by date and a short initialism for the armies. So check that out if you want to. Now for my opponent's list, we start out with a regiment of Naiad Heartpiercers, followed by 2 hordes of elementals, 1 is earth and 1 is fire. Then we have 2 regiments of Forest Shamblers, a horde of Sylph Talon Riders with the Heart-Seeking Chant, a druid with Aura of Heroism. Now I also think he has Surge 7, but yeah, I didn't write it down here. Then we have a Tree Herder, 2 Winged Unicorns, both of whom have Lightning Bolt 5 to complement their heal 7, and then 2 Beasts of Nature, both of whom have Lightning Bolt 6, Fly 10, and Vicious and the 7 attacks upgrades. As for my thoughts on the list, it seems like a pretty, at least to me, standard monster mash for Forces of Nature. It's got, at least 4 flying monsters. It has a 5th in the Tree Herder, which is a little expensive, but very difficult to budge monster, and then it has a decent core in the elementals and an excellent ranged unit in those Talon Riders. Now I understand that the rumor has it that the Talon Riders will probably go down to 12 attacks and gain Thunderous Charge 1, and in my opinion that's just a side grade. Talon Riders are an excellent unit right now, and I'd love to see them be a bit more melee capable, so they're not just flying around shooting people, because that's kind of annoying to play against. Anyway, moving forward. Here we have my Trident Realms list. We start out with 2 troops of Thule and a regiment of Thule with the Brew of Strength. Then 2 hordes of Depth Horrors with 1 having the Healing Brew. Then we have a horde of Gigas with the Banner of the Griffin, a horde of Worm Riders with the Brew of Courage, a Knucker, 2 Coral Giants, a Thule Mythicin with Aura of Heroism 3 and Blade of Slashing, Ector, the Thule Formation, and Nikushi, the Worm Rider. So, in case you didn't know, the Thule formation is for the 2 troops of Thule, the Regiment of Thule, and the Mythicin. It gives them all +1 speed, and in my opinion is one of the best formations in the game. It's just really good. Thule are a pretty solid unit to begin with, and then giving them speed 7 just makes them excellent. So, obviously I brought that. As for my thoughts on the list, I don't really have that many, as I've never played Trident Realms before this game. I very rarely play against them, and there aren't that many in this area. So yeah, I kind of threw this together by some models that I didn't bring in this game, as the Weirds The Other Side launched, and I just got the Kickstarter for it, which was a bunch of gibbering horde models, which are all these fishmen. So I was eager to put them on the table, and I just dug up any list in my easy army and plopped it on the table. So anyway, we'll see how it does. Moving forward, here we see the end of deployment. Let's go through the table real quick. Over here on the left, we have a height 2 hill, followed by over here on the right, a height 2 hill as well. Then over here on the right again, we have a height 6 forest, and then another height 6 forest in my opponent's deployment zone centrally. We have a height flat water feature over here on the left, and another one down here slightly off frame on the right past my dice. Lastly, we have or I guess not lastly, but we have these height 1 barriers starting off in my opponent's deployment on the right, and then down in my deployment zone right next to this height 4 house. So those are our terrain features, a bit better than last week's, where my opponent was playing Trident Realms and was running a very Pathfinder heavy army, and we just didn't have any rough terrain for him to get into in the middle here. But this time the Force of Nature should do a little bit better using their army roll. In the middle you can see a loot counter, or kind of see a loot counter right there. That is the center loot marker, because push is a scenario where you get D3 loot counters for each side, and then you get 1 loot counter in the center of the board. You're trying to get them across the center line, fully across the center line into your opponent's territory. That'll grant you 2 victory points at the end of the game, while just holding 1 in your territory gives you 1 per. So we rolled off and ended up with that D3 getting 1 each. So there are 3 total on the table. I have mine down here on my Gigas unit, and my opponent has it on these walrus models right past his hand, which are the earth elementals. So, you know, defense 6 units, pretty good solid bet for those tokens. And moving forward, here we see my opponent's army. Right here on the left, we have his Beast of Nature, and behind it, standing in, oh no, sorry, the Beast of Nature is actually on this base back here, this proxy base, but he wouldn't stand there with all of his dumb wings, so instead he's just placed there. The model in the front showing his facing. To the left of him, we have the Sylph Talon Riders, or the Sylvan Talon Riders. Yep, these are some pterodons that my opponent is putting some elves on. I think that's great. Gives it a bit more flavor if they're not just all eagles all the time. Behind them, you can kind of see it back here. That is his first unicorn, or winged unicorn. And then over here on the right, in front of the wood, we have his first regiment of Force Shamblers. They have already vanguarded. And then behind them, that's the Heartpiercer unit, or regiment. Over here, we have again a blank base next to the Heartpiercers. That is this tree herder. It's just not going to fit next to those walrus models, so it's a proxy base for now. Then next to the tree herder, we have the walruses, which are the earth elementals. And behind them, you can see them sort of peeking out right here. That is the druid. Then to the right of that, we have the fire elementals, which are these cool salamander models. And then again, another Beast of Nature with a unicorn behind him. So that's my opponent's army. Pretty solid deployment. Putting the two sets of flyers on each side and having one side more dedicated to the movement over there on the left seems good to me, because the right, if you didn't notice, which I'm sure I'll show you in the next picture, or the coming pictures, these earth elementals, or these elementals as a whole, they're facing down the center lane, which is pretty open. So he wants to put those there because obviously we're going to have the biggest combats, and putting your slower combat blocks there means that they will sit there, hold, probably defeat some units while his faster units can circle around me. Seems good. As for the Trident Realms deployment, starting on my right, we have my regiment of Thule. So these are little bog trogs from Privateer Press. We have a troop of Thule and a troop of Thule right there. And then behind them, these guys are my depth horrors, which are again the other side's Carcanoi models, which are these cool centipedes. And then we have a worm, that's the Nucker. And then to the, oops, sorry. You can see him slightly off picture here. That's Ector. He is hiding behind the house. Speaking of the house, on the other side of it, we have my first coral giant, which is this octopus-looking fellow. Then right here, we have my Gigas, which are these, again, the gibbering hordes. They are, I can't remember what they're called, but yeah, pretty cool models. And then lastly, we have this guy right here, the tortoise. That is my second coral giant. And over here, finally, we have my Worm Riders, which are these, it's a unit called the Frenzy in Gibbering Hordes, which are shark people. I think they're pretty cool. And then I have behind them Nakushi, which is this, I mean, it's definitely more of a Siren model, but it's on a 50 mil base, so it's a Worm Rider today. And we move forward. So rolling off for turn 1. And the Force of Nature get it and decide to advance forward a little bit. But specifically, these Force Shamblers have already marked out where the charge range of my Thule is. So no one's moving past that 14 mark, which is pretty smart. He has me outranged here, and there's no reason to advance too quickly, as he's so fast that he is assured to get into combat when he wants to anyway. Otherwise, the shooting, he decides to put some lightning bolts from his Beast of Nature, which is right here on the picture, and I think the unicorn is right here. They fire off into my coral giant and do 2 wounds to it, which is, you know, that's not that bad, I guess, considering I have cover. And oops, that picture's out of frame, or out of context. After this, yeah, he definitely rolls a boxcar. So gets that boxcar on me, and the 2 wounds thankfully turn into 1 due to Iron Resolve, but still I am wavered, which sucks. Moving forward, we see down here on the Nucker, My opponent put all of his left flank into the knucker and does 7 wounds to it, which is pretty deadly, as he only needs a 6 to waver it then, because I'm not in range of the Banner of the Griffin. But thankfully he does not roll that, and I'm able to advance and move however I want, which is great. Lastly, I think his unicorn on the left here decided to shoot into my, fire some lightning bolts into my Thule regiment, and he does 4 wounds to me with lightning bolt 5, so, you know, it's not all, it's a pretty good turn, I think. Oh, also, this red die right in front of the tree herder shows off that he has, he's put, what is that, Rally 2 onto him. I only have Ector for ranged attacks though, so it's not really that relevant. Turn 1 for Trident Realms, we move forward, staying out this pink die in the woods on the right. That is marking off the Fire Elemental's charge range, so I'm out of his charge there. The pink die on the left is marking off the charge range for the Forest Shamblers on the left, showing that I'm out of charge range there. Otherwise, I just sort of move forward. His Beast of Nature on the left and his the Talon Riders can definitely charge into my Thule if they want. They can't really fit into any of the other units because the Thule are in the way, but if he's charging me with Beast of Nature, with any of these ranged units and or monsters into my regiments of Thule, that's just a win for me, because yeah, he'll probably kill them, but then he's sitting in the middle of my army and he doesn't get to shoot that turn, so seems pretty good. In the back here, you can see that my Knucker has decided to advance backwards and walk over to Nakushi, who I had a picture of it earlier. They got a little out of whack, but Nakushi moves forward and casts Martyr's Prayer onto the worm, hitting 4 of them, so absorbing 4 of those wounds off, and the worm being left with 3. And that's pretty good, especially as Nakushi's got that, she's got regen 4+, so she can Martyr's Prayer and then regen it back off, so yeah, great backfield character. This poor little giant can't move forward, so he just stays back, and that's it. Oh, I did have this. Yeah, Ector takes his little harpoon gun here and fires it into the 4 Shamblers, pushing them back like 2 or 3 inches and doing, I think, 2 wounds, which is not enough to actually get a break or to even get a roll. Generally, it would be a boxcar, but again, the tree man that is right here, or the tree herder right here, has that rally spell going, so no roll. But I did knock them back, I guess. And that's the end of turn 1. So both armies are, well, the Force of Nature are holding back a little bit, which is smart. The Trident Realms didn't hold back too much, but we are definitely slower, so we have to, you know, utilize taking a charge at some point. And turn 2. Turn 2, we can see the unicorn on the left here decided to fire again into my regiment of Thule. This time I'm getting a little luckier. He only does 1 wound to me. And here's the rest of his movement. Oh no, yeah, this is the rest of his movement. His 4 Shamblers decide to move forward. It just doesn't look like it because basically nothing moved. 4 Shamblers move forward to sacrifice themselves to the Thule. The Beast of Nature on the left here, again, is where this black base is. He just won't play nice, so he's sitting right there. We have the Tree Herder, again, is this proxy base in the middle of the table, and again, won't play nice, so just getting in front, that Def 6, 1820 is pretty hard to budge, so great place. The Heart Piercers get ready to let loose their, I think they have harpoon guns as well, so they're harpoons. And yeah, the Beast of Nature and Unicorn on my right decide to just move over here to fire off some shots and maybe get around my flank eventually. So, with shooting, all of his left, except for, again, that Unicorn, fire into my Carcanoid, or the Depth Horrors here, and deal 8 wounds to them, which is not great, but, you know, defense 3, I barely have cover. And I don't have cover against the Beast of Nature because it's height 4, but does 8 wounds to me, but I am a 20 because I managed to get Aura of Heroism off on my other Depth Horrors, so I'm a dash 20 right now, so I'm not super worried. And over here, the Beast of Nature plus the Unicorn put 4 wounds onto my Worm Riders, which is, again, enough for a boxcar check, but not enough for me to be worried about. And at the end of the turn, yeah, he ends up with none of those checks working from the Thule, the Depth Horrors, and the Worm Raiders. We're all ready to rock. And turn 2 for Trident Realms. Again, these pictures seem a little out of sequence, but what I'm showing here with all these 5s and 6s with 1/4 is my Martyr's Prayer that I cast onto the from Nakushi to my Depth Horrors over here that were sitting on 8 wounds. I take 7 off for me, so that's pretty good. She ended up regenning all 4 of her wounds as well, so yeah, definitely getting some value out of her. And I don't know what this is showing, so I'm going to move past it. Over here, we're showing off that Ector has decided to fire into his tree herder. And so now the model back here is actually where the model is, because I hit with 6 of the 8 wind blasts, which was pretty solid, and knocked him back 6 inches. I don't deal any wounds, I don't think. Maybe 1. But yeah, I'm liking that. Pushing any of his monsters out of position is great. And here is the end of movement for turn 2 for the Trident Realms. So you can see on the left here, I've taken both of my Thule troops and my, well, I guess this Thule troop didn't charge, but it just ran forward. The Thule troop on the right here and the Depth Horrors here, both charged into the Forest Shamblers, going for an easy kill there. I decided to have these Thule just sort of roll up onto the hill. I made a small mistake, but I'll explain that later. And otherwise, my right flank just sort of keeps its distance from his elementals. And the idea that I was going with is that his left flank is all fast monsters that can abandon it, while his right flank has to actually sit and fight. So I think eventually my opponent will just leave the left and refocus to the right. And to facilitate that, I've decided to take down any of these units on the left that are stuck here. So like, again, the Forest Shamblers, once they're gone, it'll be good. Oh, I see. He only has 1 regiment of Forest Shamblers. Oops. So, yeah. So, yeah, his Forest Shamblers, once they're gone, he doesn't have anything on the left flank that has to stay here. So I think my opponent will probably relocate or swing around behind me. But I have stuff like my Knucker in the back here by the house, ready to punish that. So, yep, that's the idea. I'll just crush the left, and then everything swings right. And yeah, at the end of combat, I easily kill off those Shamblers. I mean, Thule are pretty brutal. And the Thule advanced forward a little over an inch away from his regiment of Heart Piercers, while my Depth Horrors decide to roll backwards. So the Beast of Nature over here on the left and the really just the Beast of Nature can't flank charge them. So that's the idea. Also, due to this placement, he can't fit the since the birds right here, the Talon Riders, are the rightmost unit, he can't fit both the birds and the Beast of Nature onto these Depth Horrors because there isn't enough space between my Thule troop right here and the Depth Horrors right here. So yeah, that's sort of the idea there, making it so he can only charge me with 1 unit at a time, which really helps. Trident Realms Ensnare is a powerful rule, but you can definitely just brute force it because their defense is bad. And moving forward to turn 3. So turn 3, at the end of that, he on the left here decides to put his birds into this flat terrain, height flat terrain. It's still in range of these this Thule troop, but he's going, well, you'll be hindered and you're just a Thule troop, I could just shoot you. So, yep, seems solid to me. And here's the mistake I made with my Thule regiment. I didn't see, for whatever reason, I didn't see that this unicorn had a flank charge onto them. That's really bad. I should have just adjusted it slightly, but I didn't do that. So instead I get flanked by unicorn and in the front by Beast of Nature. I don't think I'm afraid of both of them charging me in the front, because right now I do have the +2 rally again on my Depth Horrors. So these guys are a 16-18 with 5 wounds on them, meaning they're an 11-13, right? So he has to do pretty well to take them out. But I don't do that. Instead I get flanked, so that's scary. The tree herder decides to charge into my troop of Thule, so yeah, that's probably bad for them. And over here on the right, since the elementals don't move, the Beast of Nature and Unicorn just set themselves up to get a flank charge if I advance into this center area too hard. So yep, pretty standard. With his shooting, he does 2 wounds, or no, I'm sorry, he does 1 wound. I healed 3 with my regen 4+ before to my, what is it, a horde of Worm Raiders. So, yep, forcing a nerve check, I guess. And these guys take a huge amount of damage, so they take 11, which is pretty rough. And it's almost all from these heart piercers, not from the birds over here. So the birds fire and do fairly well, which is something because they haven't been doing well so far. But these heart piercers hit with like 8 attacks on a 5+, because I do have cover due to my Thule, I think. But yeah, oh no, I don't have cover. He just had to move out of the way so this could charge. So yeah, he's shooting at me on 5s and hits with like 8. So rough news for these guys. But at the end of the turn, they do hold because I'm a -20, so we needed a 9 twice. Doesn't get it. So, yep, pop right through there. The Beast of Nature over here on the left is fighting the Thules, again where the proxy base is, not where the Beast is. And for these combats, he ends up doing a measly 6 damage to me, but yeah, it's enough when he gets that 7. I think he had to do the 7 twice because the Mythican's there, but yeah, gets it. They're out of there. And these Thule, on the other hand, take 4 wounds from the tree and aren't even wavered. They do not care. So, pretty cool. And here's the end of the round. Things are looking a little rough for the Trident Realms, but we're about to get that counterpunch and we'll see what we can do with it. So, turn 3 for the Trident Realms. I get my, on the left here, I get my Knucker and the Thule Mythican into this unicorn, into the front of the unicorn. Which seems like it'll probably be enough to at least waver it. It's only a 12-14 with defense 5, and I've got 6 Thunderous 3 attacks and 5 Crushing 1 attacks on 4s and 3s respectively. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. While I get my Depth Horrors and Ector, you can see over here, into this Beast of Nature. Again, they're in the front of it, but that's a lot of attacks. You know, 18 attacks on 3s with Crush 1, so 18 3s and 4s, and then I think Ector has 6 attacks with Crush 2, so 6 more 3s and 3s because he's Crush 2. Yeah, should be interesting on the hill. Over here in the top left, we see my Thule troop going into the Birdos, just looking to lock them down, turn off their shooting, turn off their flight. Not anything big. The Depth Horrors that took 11 wounds, along with this little troop of Thule. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Depth Horrors that took all these wounds end up after the Thule troop and the Coral Giant here charge into this Tree Herder. I did this charge first because I really wanted this unit of Depth Horrors to take down these Heart Piercers, but he's sticking out of the forest a little bit, so I wanted to turn off that Pathfinder negative, so I charged in with these first. I split the frontage, and then these guys have to go to that corner and get a pretty easy charge. Again, it's like 18 attacks on 3s, 18 attacks on 3s and 2s. Yeah, I like that. Nikushi advances to the center of the board to help get some inspiring places, and my Gigas advance onto the token while keeping their front facing towards the Beasts of Nature and the Elementals at the same time. Now, the last charge I do here is a bit risky, where I send the Coral Giant here and the Worm Riders into his Earth Elementals. And it's risky not just because that's a difficult charge to begin with, but I'm also sending the Worm Riders over an obstacle. So they're -1 to hit, so 4s now, and they lose that 1 Thunderous, so they're 4s and 5s. So not the best unit, but I needed to make sure that his Elementals couldn't advance this turn. So I'm basically just sacrificing these and hoping that I kill off the Earth Elementals, but if I don't do that, at least I don't lose both units. Because I really, again, need to take the left before I can focus on the right. So that's the idea. Showing off the combats. At the end of... Oh, sorry. Let's go back to this combat. So, yeah, at the end of this combat, I do 7 damage with my 15 attacks on 4s and 3s, which is very good. And I get the waiver. So, yeah, a break would have been great, but I'll take that waiver. That's good stuff. Moving forward, the unicorn only takes 4 wounds from my Knucker and Mythican together, so that's unfortunate, and I don't roll the 8 I needed to waiver it, so yeah, it's gonna charge into me as well. At least I stripped its flight and Thunderous, I guess. Over here, though, yeah, the Beast of Nature just gets rocked. I do, I think, like 12 wounds with the Depth Horrors, and Hector lends 1 or 2 in, and it's just good night to him. So, yep. And over here, it turns out that the Thule plus the Coral Giant probably can't drop a Tree Herder in 1 round, so that's expected. I also don't waver it, it's pretty hard. I think I did 7 wounds to this thing. Excuse me. But the bigger thing is I actually roll pretty poorly here. I only do 7 wounds to these heart piercers, and I don't even waver them. So, that's ugly. But, you know, it's what happens sometimes. Right here, I again do pretty poorly, but I wasn't expecting to do well. So I do 1 or 2 wounds to the Earth Elementals. Again, my Coral Giants in both the combats have only rolled one bonus attack, and then haven't been rolling that well. So yeah, I don't even get the roll to see if I get the break, and I back up an inch. So ready to take that counter charge. Here's the end of the round. Yeah, you can see the Worm Riders are probably worm food. The Coral Giants are, they're probably okay right now. They're not inspired, so he could definitely spike damage onto them. But I am definitely taking the left side of the board. It's looking great for me. The right side looking a little dicey, but we'll see what my next turn holds. So turn 4. Turn 4 for the Forces of Nature. That was a lot of 4s. They finally start getting into the actual fight on their own terms. So on the left here, he sends his Unicorn into my Mythican, hoping to strip me of my Inspiring, although that Mythican's only inspiring himself, so who cares? And the birds over here that are wavered just back up 5 away, because there's no reason for him to fight me closer to where the action might lie later, even if I'll charge him again. The Heart Piercers charge into my very wounded Depth Horrors, and that's unfortunate for me. It looks like, Nakushi also has been regenning, obviously. I don't think she got to cast any spells. I think she had to run over there. So that's why these Depth Horrors are still so wounded. But yeah, he sends his Tree Herder into my Coral Giant, and the idea here was that he could either countercharge the Coral Giant or the Thule. If he does it to the Thule, I have a flank charge with the Coral Giant, and the inverse the other way. But a flank charge from the Coral Giant is much, much worse, as he is Strider, and doubling his attacks, he can spike really hard. While the Thule, granted, they'll have 30 attacks, but it'll be on 4s and 6s, so it's actually not that much damage. I think that my opponent made the right decision there. Over on the right, we can see the Earth Elementals go into my second Coral Giant, just hoping to slap some wounds onto it, while this Beast of Nature and the Fire Elementals, who are hindered for charging over the barrier, charge into my Worm Riders, and yeah, that's not great for them. And we move forward. So here is the end of combat. He does 2 wounds to my Thule Mythican, and then rolls, he doesn't roll double ones, but he rolls really low, because after this combat we went, probably should have just charged the worm, the Knucker, because I'm sitting on 3 wounds, but I have Thunderous 3, meaning that stripping that Thunderous is probably better, and it's identical to hit and wound and break these guys, because the Knucker is sitting on 3 wounds. So yeah, probably a small mistake, but one that doesn't matter anyway. And right here, yeah, he ends up doing one or two wounds to my Depth Horrors, which is unfortunate for them because they're already sitting on 11 wounds. And when it comes for break check, yep, gets that boxcars. So yeah, bye-bye to centipedes. They're gross and gone. The Tree Herder does 3 wounds to my Coral Giant. It's down to 2 because he doesn't manage to waver it, and the Iron Resolve ticks. Here, yeah, he does a ton of wounds. I think it's 25 damage to the Worm Riders and just poofs them one go. And this is his reform because he's now out of range of my Gigas due to their speed 4. Yeah. And here, he actually does 4 wounds to the Coral Giant, fighting these Earth Elementals, but it goes back down to 3 because he fails to waver or break it. And here's the end of the round. We'll see what it holds for Trident Realms turn 4. So Trident Realms turn 4. I send my Knucker and Mythican on the left here back into the Unicorn. It's sitting on 4 wounds, so it should be easy prey as I haven't lost any Thunderous. I send my Thule troop on the upper left back into the Birdos, hoping to finish them off. They're sitting on 7 damage, so should be easy. This Thule troop tries to go finish off this regiment of Heart Piercers, who are apparently mad that I didn't bring any Naiads in my well, I did, but I didn't bring any on foot, so they're mad about that. My Coral Giant and Nikushi decide to go into his tree herder, and my idea here is that I need Nikushi to be centrally located, as I'm running out of Inspire over there, and Ector is just not fast enough, and I want him to be able to shoot, so he doesn't want to run. So I need her to be a bit more central, and the healing isn't all that relevant since I lost those depth horrors, so I just send her into the tree herder looking for a spike. I send my second Coral Giant and the Gigas, who are just barely within 8 of the Earth Elementals here, hoping to finish the job. If I can nab the token that they have, it'd be really bad, as I already have I took the center one with the Gigas the turn before, so they have 2, and if I can nab this last one, it'll be an uphill battle for my opponent. The Depth Horrors that killed off the Beasts of Nature advance as far as they can towards the right of the board. Again, that speed 6, while it's decent, isn't great, so they don't make it very far. And Ector, lastly, just lines up a shot over here onto the Fire Elementals. He can see this corner, or he can reach this corner, and then he can see this part of the unit. So that's the idea. I'll just shove them back over the barrier so they're hindered forever. Yeah, showing off that Ector does indeed hit these Fire Elementals with his little gun, his Kraken Maw, and he does 2 wounds to him, so pretty good. Ector really, doing work this game. And here, yeah, I do 2 more wounds to the Unicorn, which again is pretty bad, but then I roll double ones anyway, so yay, the battle continues. Excuse me again. Up here in the top left, my Troop of Thule take down the birds, so that's all as well. And in the middle, yeah, you can see off here on the left, this Troop of Thule also fails to take down the Naiads, so these guys are just obviously brawlers, can't take them down. But my Coral Giant and Nikushi charged into the big bad tree and put it up to 11 wounds and get a waiver, so feeling lucky there. I think my opponent tried to get Aura of Heroism onto the tree this turn, but actually failed all 3, or last turn. So yeah, he failed all 3, so no Aura, which is great for here, where my Gigas and Coral Giant just walk right through this, those Earth Elementals. I mean, it's D6 plus 6, 4 plus, 3 plus, and then 12 3s and 3s. So yeah, it was pretty easy once I got rid of the Aura of Heroism, and by that I mean my opponent didn't roll it. And here is the end of turn 4. Things are looking a little dicey for the Force of Nature. The Trident Realms have a secure hold on the left flank, even though these dumb Heart Piercers won't die along with this Unicorn, but they're pretty much locked down. So, and then on the right flank, I have taken all 3 tokens. I've got 1 on this Coral Giant and 2 on my Gigas, and I'm facing off against his Beast, Unicorn, and Fire Elementals, as the Tree Herder was wavered. So yeah, not a whole lot my opponent can do. We'll see what he does though, with turn 5 Forces of Nature. So turn 5, you can see that first off, his Tree Herder just backs up a little bit. That's a line of sight thing. He was making sure that I think he's blocking the line of sight of my Coral Giant for his final placement. The Heart Piercers go into the front of this dumb Troop of Thule because they failed. And the Unicorn goes into the Thule Mythicin because why not? He's already done 2 wounds to it. It's pretty easy to kill off now. Now on the left here, or on the right here, I made a big mistake, and you can see the final movement. I had readjusted my Coral Giant to fall back instead of just turning his facing, and that was because I didn't want this Beast of Nature to be able to flank charge Nikushi. So I fell back with that, but then I made a big mistake with these Gigas because I could have just adjusted them a little bit more like that. And still fit around my turtle. and then made it so, not this extreme, but a bit more angled, because these fire elementals could move just perfectly to get their leader point in my flank for that all-important surge from this dumb druid back here. So yep, he gets the flank onto the Gigas, and it's that's going to be a big spike. Yeah, showing off the charge. At the end of this combat, he does 0 wounds to my Thule, so finally, you know, Thule doing something. I mean, they've been doing a lot. I don't know what I'm talking about. Here, the unicorn misses all of its attacks, so the pillow hill over here continues and backs up. And yeah, he ends up doing 16 wounds to the Gigas, which is double 1 town, and easily removing them. So at the end of the turn, I lost my Gigas. He has taken both tokens and put them onto his fire elementals and back here. My opponent is in full draw mode here. Because I have 2 points for having this turtle across his center line, and then he's probably not going to get across my center line due to the loss of flight and the loss of speed. So he just puts them onto the fire elementals and holds them, which seems smart to me. And move forward to turn 5 Trident Realms. So starting in the bottom left, I decide that the snake can probably do it by itself, and goes into the very wounded unicorn. It'll slide back over here once we're done, but I haven't moved it yet. I take my Thule Mythicin and pull it over here because I need to get Aura of Heroism going this turn, so to make sure that my turtle cannot be dropped by the Beast of Nature plus the unicorn. Both of my Thule troops go into the Heart Piercers, one in the flank and one in the front. Please kill the Heart Piercers. And I take my Coral Giant here and charge into the Tree Herder, hoping to get another waiver, maybe, as he healed it for like 6 points with his heal 7. So yeah, it's only sitting on like 5 or 6 damage right now. But hopefully I'll get that waiver. I back up with my turtle to this point on the board, just making it so I'm again limiting the number of units, because he can only charge me with either the beast or the unicorn, because I'm a 50, this is a 50, and as long as I don't go forward with this other giant, he'll be corner to corner, which won't work. I angle my Depth Horrors to be able to get into any of the fights I need to on this side of the field while still being at a native charge range of the Fire Elementals. And Ector just moves to the back here to provide support. He is inspiring this turtle and these Depth Horrors. He doesn't quite reach the other Coral Giant, but that's probably fine. And he is a great Aura of Heroism target. Lastly, I take Nikushi and I do a little worm charge because of her nimble, and I get into the druid. The idea here is that the druid shouldn't be that hard to kill. I have, I think, six or 7 attacks on 3s and 2s. So and it's only a 10-12, I want to say. So if I pop out that druid, I can just turn back around facing this way, and he'll have to send. He'll probably send the unicorn in to deal with me in the front, because if he doesn't, I can get a flank charge along with some front charges from my Coral Giants. So yep, that's the idea. And here is the shooting. I end up throwing another Kraken Maw into the beast. I don't do any damage, but I do push it on top of an objective, or onto an obstacle, so that'll show it. Yeah, and then in this fight I do 2 more damage, but yep, still nothing. It's not even wavered. I do manage to kill off the Heart Piercer, so finally the left flank is, or the center is cleared up. And my Coral Giant just, he spikes hard. I think he gets the 6 attacks, so he's got 12 attacks. He hits with like 10 of them, does a ton of damage to the Tree Herder, and then rolls out the box anyway, so no more Tree Herder, and that is real bad for the Forces of Nature. But over here, yeah, I do 2 wounds to the druid, because Nikushi is a great healer and not really a fighter. At least mine isn't. So I do 2 wounds to the druid. I don't get a waiver, but at least it's disrupted, so no surge shenanigans. And we move forward to at the bottom of turn 5. It looks like this. Force of Nature are kind of on the back foot, but we are currently tied in terms of scenario, so it's not over yet. Turn 6. So turn 6, we see the Beast of Nature that was here is now this proxy base again, because my opponent decides to kill off my Thule Mythicin. not entirely sure why he went for the Mythican, but I think it was because the Giants were not a good choice, as the Depth Horrors here would get a countercharge, and then he couldn't really fly anywhere towards this central forest because I have these Thule troops, so he just decides to take the points where he can get them, and he is fully committed to getting a draw now and pushing attrition points, so trying to bleed me of as many as possible, since only Ector will be able to get the countercharge if he kills off the Mythican there. The Unicorn decides to back up a little bit. It could have charged Nikushi in the flank, but it wants to heal these fire elementals, making sure that my giant can't spike. The giant with the token, the turtle, can't actually see these fire elementals because my other giant is blocking its line of sight, so it's funny but not helpful. Lastly, we see the druid that has wandered away, leaving Nikushi a place to play. And yep, kills off the Mythican. And this unicorn charges into my snake, into my Knucker, dealing 2 wounds, but you know, we still can't break each other. In fact, we're not even wavered, so Pillow Hill continues. And here's the end of Force of Nature turn 5, or turn 6. So turn 6 for for Trident Realms. In the bottom left, I send the Knucker back into the Unicorn. We're not even bothering to move them now, because why bother? I take my Thule troops and I break 1 to face towards the center of the field, just to block off some, fly shenanigans. I take the other Thule troop and face the flank of the Fire Elementals, just in case there's a turn 7. And also to help, trap my Tortoise here, so I can't get as many units in, since his Fire Elementals can't fit in this gap between this Coral Giant and these Thule. This Coral Giant charges into the Fire Elementals, hoping to spike some damage. It might look like Nikushi in the back here has charged into the Fire Elementals, but I actually couldn't see him, and also I wouldn't be in the rear, I'd be on the flank. So what I did instead was boop, boop, go over here and cast Heal onto this. I'm going to cast Martyr's Prayer onto my Coral Giant, hoping to remove possibility of a loss. And then lastly, we've got this Unicorn here. I think not this Unicorn. These Depth Horrors move forward and threaten the Unicorn and the Fire Elementals. Again, a slight misplay by me, but this was around 1 in the morning. So I, again, should have had these facing a bit more like this. That way the Fire Elementals couldn't jank their way out of my line of sight, but it is what it is. And then Ector moves centrally just to give his Inspire. I don't really want to charge the beast. I don't really care if he kills the Knucker, since my opponent decided to not turn around and is facing that way, banking on there not being a turn 7. And at the end of combat, we can see that my Knucker in the bottom left finally finishes off the Unicorn, so yay him. And the other combat I've got going on, this Coral Giant doesn't manage to one-shot these Fire Elementals, surprise, surprise, while Nikushi pulls all 3 wounds to herself from my Coral Giant with the token on it. So that's the idea. And yeah, we roll, and we do in fact get a turn 7. So turn 7 for Forces of Nature. In the bottom left, we see the Beast of Nature going to finish off my Knucker. Then we have the Fire Elementals countercharging into my Coral Giant. Since he could really only go he could shimmy to my left or to the right, because Nikushi's trapping him. He can't go backwards. He could shimmy to my left if he wants to avoid these guys, but he could also just move this Unicorn, which is what he ends up doing, to block that charge anyway. So yep, just goes for the charge onto the Coral Giant, hoping to get some easy points, because he can't avoid this Coral Giant and these Thule anyway. So if he pops these guys, he can just turn around, go forward, he can do a lot of things. At the end of combat, yeah, finally the snake is dead, Garbage Hill is dealt with. And at the end of this, he does 6 wounds to my Coral Giant, or 7 wounds to my Coral Giant, and doesn't get the waiver, so I'm ready to rock. His Unicorn actually cast Heal onto his Fire Elementals, removing their 2 wounds, so they're at full health. And here's the end of that, and we move on to Trident Realms and Arms for turn 7. And here we can see I charged my remaining depth horrors into the unicorn, hoping to get a few more points. And the thing that matters, I send the coral giant with a token, the coral giant without a token. This base is Ector's base, and then the Thule go into the flank of these fire elementals, hoping to just net all the points and end the game that way. And that's what happens. Yeah, it's not even that great of a roll, but I don't need a great roll to kill off these guys. And I take all 3 tokens. These 2 go on to, I think, the other coral giant. Doesn't really matter, since it's the bottom of 7. And I end up with an end of game state where I have all 3 tokens all on my opponent's side, so that's 6 points. He has 0. And then for attrition, I think I've also got him there, as I still have the depth horrors, both giants, Nakushi, Ector, you know, the Thule troop, and the formation, while he only has this beast of nature and this unicorn, and then I guess this druid as well. So yeah, end up with a telling win against the forces of nature for the Trident Realms. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!